Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kesgrave Panthers Podcast. Today, our guest is none other than 1985 world champion Jim Varnish. How are you feeling today, Jim?
Yeah, good. Looking forward to having a good chat with you two boys.
Yeah, good. So, as usual, we'll start off. How did you get into cycle speedway?
Blimey, that seems like a long time ago now. In fact, what was it? 85 was a long time before you were born, I think, boys. So
Yeah,
it was a little bit before that. So it was interesting actually. So it was, obviously my dad, John, who's still around. He was the silver medalist in 1959 to the great Brian Mostyn, and in an area where I guess you could call my dad one of the original skid kids back in the mid 50s, with his slick back hair and his big wide bars, building his bikes off the bomb sites. And it was quite a few years after that, obviously, and I was just literally just playing around in the back garden, and he said something like, "What are you doing?" So I'm just, and it was a kind of a natural thing. Where we used to go watch a bit of the speedway, but it was kind of a natural thing. And then he took me out a few times, and he was very quick, even for an older boy then. But he was very, very quick, and he introduced me to the sport. And I was very lucky to get involved and go down and meet some fabulous blokes down at the King Standing track, which is now Birmingham. I think that was about 74, 75, so a long time ago. But that's how I kind of got into it, and I was very lucky because had a kind of, I don't know, a good pedigree to follow him, and I always wanted to be a gold medalist rather than a silver medalist like he was. So it gave me that little bit of motivation.
So do you remember what your first meeting was?
No, I don't. But I can remember a few of the names. So it was King Standing, and they were riding. I think it was in the Northern Premier League then. So there was some great. Bob Prince was actually riding at that point. So you remember Bob? Shout out to Bob if he's watching. I'm sure he will be. The likes of Joe McLaughlin, Carl Wilkinson from Archie's son was around, and I think it had probably been a Northern Premier second division meeting at King Standing. And I remember the body colours were too big, so we used to have to tie them back. We were wearing body colours back then, so and then I raced in a cup called the Brady Cup, which a lot of the local lads around the Midlands will remember. And that was for under 18s, and that was at the Sandwell track, which was an Oldby track then, which is run by Brian Buck. And that was a tough meeting. And it was one that my dad had won as an under 18, and it took me about, 5 or 6 attempts to win that. The great Calvin Stevens won it, I think, before me from Sandwell. He stopped me winning it a few times. It was always a bit of a battle, but I think, probably 74, 75, I guess now.
Yeah, so going back to when you first started, the track that you first rode on, did you enjoy it? Was there something a bit that you would have improved with it, or what?
Well, Birmingham King Standing as a track, very similar to what it was like now. It felt a lot bigger then because it was a lot smaller. I wasn't 6'2" then, but it was. We were very lucky back then because the shale was what they call Arby shale, which was, you could really do something with it, and the lads used to really prepare it. I remember that the big meetings, it being swept off and quite fast. But obviously for a young kid like me riding, I was young. I was 10 years old, so it was just a case of getting around for 4 laps really without falling off. But Sandwell track was a bit smaller, I guess. But I actually liked big tracks and small tracks. I like the technical side of the sport. So I guess I was very lucky to ride on those 2 tracks, and get stuck in back then. So yeah, it's good.
So what would you say your favourite track was?
That's a very good question. I'm going to upset all my mates if I don't tell me about their track. I didn't really have a favourite track, if I'm honest. No, I've ridden the vast majority of all the tracks. In Australia as well, there's some fantastic tracks out there. I didn't really have a favourite. I think I used to be quite adaptable to the tracks and the conditions, which I think is really important. I think if you have a favourite track, I think it's going to put you off riding on tracks that aren't that your favourite. So I was never really that way inclined. I knew King Standing like the back of my hand, and I probably still do if I went and rode it now. I did that many laps around that track. Obviously, the Thurrock track was very, very special back then. But I also liked, for the purists out there, I used to like the Bristol track as well, because it had a really long run from the gate. I wasn't that quick out the gate, so it had a really long run from the gate to the first bend, which enabled me to get going, and I could actually, hang on to some of the quicker gators out there on that kind of track. So big mixture, really, Noah. But there wasn't many tracks I didn't like, if I'm honest. But they're always tainted. If you have a good match, you can think it's a great track. If you have a bad match, you think, wow, not such a good track. But Wentzville also, I love Wentzville as well. Big wide open spaces to use the speed and the power. So I can't really answer your question directly, Noah, but that's what I think.
You mentioned the Thurrock track, and I think that's where you won your 1984 British title, if I'm right, or is that a different track?
No, you bang on. That's why it's my favourite.
Okay.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, that is the track. Yeah, that's a very, very special track. In fact, I might be mistaken, but I think back then what they did, there was a template for the actual track that they were building. And I think the Poole track's very similar. I think there was other tracks that were built off a template. But I mean, riding on Thurrock was like, in the big meetings, as I'm sure you'll see as you go through your career, when you ride a big meeting, the atmosphere, is incredible. And Thurrock track particularly was, the one particular race, in fact, which a lot of people have watched. But it was a great track, and the atmosphere is fantastic, and actually a bit of a leveler, really, because it wasn't really a kind of track where a local rider could do really well on it because he knew the bends or whatever. It was a superb track.
So how would you say that the Daily Mirror, what did they do to help promote the sport?
Well, obviously put a lot of money in, which is down to that fantastic gentleman Rod Witham, who we lost last year, and negotiating a sponsorship deal like that at that kind of level was fantastic. But it wasn't so much that, when you see the jersey with the Daily Mirror on it, it's iconic now, isn't it? And fantastic if you've got a Daily Mirror jersey or similar. TSB was another sponsor back in the day, big name, which you probably don't remember. But apart from putting a lot of money in and raising the profile with a bit of press, it was just great kudos for the sport to have such a big name, aligned to the sport. You had Daily Mirror, back in the day, you had Daily Mirror, you had TSB, Trustee Savings Bank. In fact, you also had Corona, which is the refreshment drink manufacturer, which probably a little bit young to remember that, but I remember that. But they were quite big names to have, and always quite iconic to have those on the jersey. And not forgetting the Andrew, Ken, who's a personal friend of my family. He put tremendous amounts of money into the sport, and those logos, they become iconic, don't they? When you see them on the jersey, you see that Andrew logo or the Daily Mirror logo. It's they're great to look back at.
Back to that 1984 British final, I think I watched one of the races that was it has been deemed one of the greatest cycle speedway races of all time. I think you had a good battle with John Watchman, if I'm right, in that race.
Who's that? John who? No.
John, yeah. So,
no, you're right, mate. I'm joking. He's a good friend of mine. So it's
in that video though, the crowds are much bigger, I think, than what they are today. And so last episode we talked with Alan Busby about the decline in the sport and how not many people were doing it. And would you agree that there's been quite a substantial decline in over time, really?
I thought you were going to ask me about that race then. I could have told you lots about that. We'll come back to that. No, I don't know. I don't know. No, it's very easy for the bystanders like me to spout off about the decline or the increase in the sport. I'm going to nationals this weekend, so I don't know. I've been to big meetings years ago and there wasn't that many people there, and I've been to big meetings when there's been thousands of people there. So I think it's what I would say is, the top riders of today, your top 20 riders are magnificent. I watch them race, and they're a different kind of rider to us. Strong. They've got different kind of tracks now, and they've got different conditions. Maybe that means less people come to watch. I don't know. I wouldn't like to say the sport's in decline, Noah. I think it's it's always been a sport that needs work, and great administrators, to keep the sport on track. It's unfortunate because it's probably the best kept secret in cycling, So, it's down to everybody that's involved with the sport to keep pushing out there and telling people to watch the videos and come to watch a race meeting and promote it. There's no point in standing back and saying, well, the sport's dying. But British Cycling obviously linked up, and people got their views on how that's going to generate more opportunity in the sport. But still a fantastic sport to watch, and we need to promote it more, I guess, and get behind it. But I do know there's some great guys out there doing it. I mean, look at the books that are being produced now. Dave Murphy's just pulled out another fantastic book. That's brilliant. We didn't have that back in the day. We had a magazine every quarter, I think it was. But I guess it's down to the people in sport to promote it and make it as exciting as possible. And I know the guys that race don't go out there to make it exciting. They go out there to win. But it is fantastic sport to watch. So tell your mates to come and watch it.
Should we go back to that race that that started the question off?
Yeah.
But yeah, you said you could tell us a lot about it. So
I've watched it a few times. Yeah, it was. What a great race. I don't know whether the people that did the draw realised what they'd actually got there, because they got 4 riders that really, really wanted to win, and they're all capable of winning. Any one of that 4 could have won that race with a bit of luck, and it was rerun. John obviously shut the gap on me when I got underneath him. I think it's the second time around in the first lap, and obviously I complained, and the referee was perfectly in his right to rerun it. And then I think it's more a case of watch the race, and you can see I take my time. I'm waiting, because obviously there's a lot going on in front of me, and Alan Cox makes a move on Les, which opens the ride up for me, and I've got a lot of momentum coming from the back of the race to the front of the race, and I use that momentum to push past John. I did take a couple of spokes out his back wheel, which he keeps mentioning to me. In fact, I might have to put a couple in my pocket for him the weekend. But great race. But you've got to really want it, and I can promise you that I really, really wanted it that day. And you can see when I go over the line, a race to the line, and great race to win. I'm delighted it's had so many views. Yeah, fantastic. Really, really quite proud of it, as I would imagine the other riders in the race are too.
Like watching that, there was a lot of there's a lot of physicality in that race, I think.
Yeah.
Compared to
You're right.
Me and Charlie with juniors, we haven't got to that stage yet. So it's kind of a bit. I don't really know how to describe it. It's
it's brutal, bit brutal.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. But yeah, so
I guess you're right, Noah. But I guess you've got to remember you've got 4 people racing to try to win the national championship there, and it's the one they want to win. And but what I would say is, it was. There was some hard work going in. There was some big moves going in. There was a lot of physicality in. Racing probably was more physical then. I don't know, but certainly needed a good referee to make sure that nobody was riding dirty. That's one thing I'd say. No, on that ride, nobody's riding dirty. They're riding really hard, and there's a big difference between riding dirty and riding hard. And nobody at that level would ride dirty. They just want to race hard and win. They don't need to ride dirty. They just ride extremely fast. If you leave a gap, they're going to take it. Simple as that. And it's your job to either shut that down or make a move yourself. So, at that level, in that period of the sport, it was pretty brutal. Yeah. If you watch the whole match, actually, there's a lot of there's a very fast track as well. Remember, Noah. So you've got a lot of fast riders on a very narrow track, all racing to win the biggest championship of the year, and it's always going to be a bit tasty, isn't it?
So, how would you say the racing was like different back then to what it is now? Would you say there's any major differences?
I think the tracks are making a difference. I think if you look at that track at Thurrock, I would imagine it was. I'd be corrected. I'm sure lads will correct me, but I think it was Arbishale. And Arbishale, you could do a lot with it. You could sweep it off, and you could. I think Alan Busby was actually pulling the tapes actually, so he might be able to tell you. But they used to water it. They used to sweep it. They used to make it really, really fast. So you could get away with really high pressure tyres. You could get away with 20, slightly bigger wheel now compared to the mountain bike size. So the demographics of the bike was slightly different. I'm not saying the racing is any better or worse. I'm not at all, because I don't believe it is any better then or it is now. I think it's equal. But I think the tracks are different. I think we used to rely on a lot more speed, as you can see in that race, a lot of speed taken through. Whereas now, year to bending is, technically you can skid and you have to start again. You've got to be quite strong for that. So a different kind of athletes coming through now. You look at the likes of Timsey and Paul Hurd and Bowler and those guys, Andy Angel. They're strong boys. I don't want to miss anybody out, but they're the ones that come to my mind. They're strong lads, and they need to be on these tracks because the tracks seem to be heavier and deeper. And the line, probably the lines are different as well. Now we could ride big sweeping lines because we could use that speed and momentum, whereas the tracks now may not give you that momentum now. I haven't been on one for a while, but I would imagine, looking at what I'm seeing, it's like riding a wet track in my old days. It would have been like riding a wet track every weekend, which would be difficult.
Yeah, maybe you should go and have a go, as you haven't been on a bike.
Yeah, thanks for that, mate. I'll let you know. Maybe me and you can do a race then.
Yeah. So going back, we introduced you as the 1985 world champion, obviously, but how did it feel when you won that title?
Very proud, mate. Very proud. It was it was a long list of things that were going on at the time. So I was very fortunate because that was winning that one was the Grand Slam, which was just winning the under 18, under 21, senior, Australian and world in succession, which I just thought I'd better mention. That was the one that I wanted to keep, that the Grand Slam, which is really quite important for me personally. But nevertheless, that meeting was part of the series they were out in Australia with some brilliant. The team that they took out that year was pretty iconic, really. Roger, Johnny Watts was riding, Martin Jarvis, Tim Snook, to name a few. Paul Ogden, Kevin Sutton, just a fantastic team of riders that we went out there. So, and the World Masters was like the end of it, really. It was we were there for a month. We were racing. We're all close mates. We still are. But actually, when we were racing at that particular event, it was pretty, once again, quite brutal. And we all wanted to win that championship.
So why did you ride? What did you ride for?
What in general? Why did I ride in general? I loved sport. I was brought up into it, really, because of my dad. I still do. I still ride, and on the road, and I loved it. I still love it. I don't know whether I could handle it anymore, but I still love it. I think it's a fantastic sport, and I used to love the fitness. I used to love the camaraderie of the guys. I used to love the bikes. I used to like the technical part of the bikes. I used to like to tinker with the bikes and make modifications. And yeah, it's a fantastic sport. For you guys, it's got everything you want. It's not massively expensive. Keeps you fit, keeps you strong. And yeah, brilliant sport. And I still love it. I still love to go and watch it rather than riding.
Yeah, but do you reckon you could give it a good go, like down one night, go training one night down your local track?
Who knows? I am 57 now, so that might sound quite old to you, mate, but it probably is. You know what, mate? I've still got a bike, and who knows? I wouldn't mind giving it a few laps just for a bit of fun. But I wouldn't hold any expectation of being able to do anything of not like the race at Thurrock anyway, particularly like that. But yeah, you lose your strength as you get older, and the gait takes a lot of power and a lot of coordination and strength. I did. Excuse me. Sorry about that. You shut the door on that dog.
Don't worry.
Sorry, you can edit that out. Yeah, I did do a ride actually up in Sheffield quite a while ago with a television thing. I just forgotten how to gate basically, and but I really enjoyed it. Getting in the mix and riding. The likes of Craig Marsh that were there and a couple of the other guys. It was great, and they all wanted to beat me, and they did most of the time. So good fun, great fun.
What would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
What about cycle speedway in life? About cycle speedway. I think you've got to be very definite with what you want to get out of the sport. Really, I mean, I was always quite focused on what I wanted to do, and everybody, I never. So the best bit of advice I was given was, you've got to focus on what you're going after, and be open about that. There's no point saying to people, I'm happy to turn up and just sweep the track and ride second team if you don't want to do that. I think you've got to be open and honest with your targets and what you want to get out of the sport. I was fortunate because I rode for Wensfield for a while after Birmingham. And I was very lucky because I got involved with a fantastic team there, and we ended up winning the national team championship, which was amazing. At that point in my career, I'd won most of the individuals I was going after, and it was a great opportunity to ride with a fantastic team like Wensfield, and we went that route then. So I think the best advice I was given is just be very, very definite about what you're going after, and and just completely lock down on it. Particularly with the way the sport is. It peaks in August, doesn't it, for the nationals? So you've got to be quite definite about what you're doing with the build up to the nationals. You've got to train for it. You've got to train a lot. You might need to be training more than your teammates, or you might need to do different training than your teammates. But if your teammates aren't focusing and get down to win the nationals, you need to go and do some training either on your own or bring them along on the journey. But just be very definite with what you're going after, and above all else, it all sounds quite serious, but just enjoy yourself. I had the best times and I've got some wonderful friends, and I still have, who I've known for 40 odd years, and I can still ring them up and have a chat and have a beer with them, and that's fantastic, and yeah. So I would say be very, very definite what you want to go after from your racing, and just and enjoy yourself and have a great time, because it is a great sport.
Yeah. Do you think you always knew what you wanted to get out of the sport, or did it take you a while to know what you wanted?
I think everybody wants to be really good. I got to a point of my racing, when I was about 14 or 15, I hadn't grown a lot. So I was actually getting a bit disillusioned, I think, because I was just small and getting pushed around a little bit. Then all of a sudden I had a bit of a growth spurt. And with that growth spurt came a little bit more presence on the track. And it was almost like, actually, I could do all right here. And I think, I got to my first junior final, I came last, and I was like, okay, but I was small. And then the second junior final, I nearly won it, and my third junior final, I won it with a maximum. So it's like, yeah, I guess I was getting to that point, but I never thought I was that good, to be honest. I was in the right place at the right time a lot of the time, and run a bit of luck here and there, and you've got to have a bit of luck. But I guess to win so many big individuals, you've got to be pretty good. But you've also got to be quite modest about it as well, and think you do have to have a bit of luck as well in the sport. And I think I had a little bit of luck a couple of times as well, which is important.
So what would you say is your most memorable moment at a meeting?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard one. There's so many, to be honest with you, because I enjoyed so much of it, and I don't mean to say there's so many fantastic big wins. I don't. I remember being about 12 or 13, racing against Blakely for King Standing, and just ridden against Derek Garnett and John Watchman and Kevin Greenhalgh and Dennis Torr. And I'll never forget this moment. They obviously beat me in the race, but Derek Garnett came around me and just put his arm around me, and he went, "Well done, son." I'm like, whoa! I was a young kid, and that stands out. That stands out to me a little bit, because that was quite important. Such a wonderful guy who we lost this year, and that stands out to me. And it's not all about winning. I could tell you, oh yeah, that championship, and I'm not running those down because they are obviously in my mind, but there's more to it than that. Just the feeling. I was talking to Chris Harrison the other day about this. Just the feeling of going on to and anybody that's been in a big final will have this feeling. The feeling of going up in your first race into a national final, and the white lines are perfect, the tape's perfect, the crowd are going mad, and then they suddenly go quiet. It's just incredible. That is incredible, and those are the kind of things that I remember. Australia does stick out in my mind as well, because that was just an amazing month. The racing in particular, and obviously doing well. But just that feeling of going onto a prepared track that people spent time and effort and energy. And I always used to say thank you to the people who set the tracks up. An immaculate track is an amazing feeling.
Yeah. So I think personally that's a very, very nice way to end today on. So I'd just like to say thank you to you, Jim, for joining us today.
You're more than welcome. Good luck with your racing.
Thank you. And yeah,
thank you. Go kick some ass.
Thank you, Charlie, for being with me as usual.
No problem.
Well done, Charlie. Enjoy your riding.
And we will see everybody next time. Goodbye.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.